Just back from the IT Expo. Fort Lauderdale. It's the Tech Super Show, also the MSP Expo show. It's in, like I mentioned, Fort Lauderdale in the big convention center, the Broward County Convention Center. It's my fourth year going. I brought the podcast, obviously, this year. I had great interviews, great discussions. I started off with Colin Bunyard, great conversation with him, Dan Gribble as well, Joshua Lieberman, who's one of our past MSP 555 winners, Corey Kirkendall, Morgan Hines. Great to talk to Morgan. And lastly was Jill Schaffenlaffel. I don't think I pronounced that correctly, Jill. I apologize, but incredible security professional. She used to be with the Department of Defense. The event was, I was mainly there for the great Channel Wise, Catherine Rose Coaching Cafe, where I got to talk to different people attending about just general coaching issues. But these are the interviews from that event, and they were great guests, and I love talking with them. Thanks so much for listening and watching.
Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. I found myself at 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. I took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People ask me, how'd you do it? What's the secret? I need to lose weight. How'd you do it? How did I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others.
So I'm Colin Bunyard. I'm an Air Force veteran, husband, father, lifelong tech enthusiast with a passion for solving complex problems, building meaningful connections. Vice president of sales at XIO. And outside of work, I'm a dedicated dad to two amazing kids. Always looking forward to spark their curiosity and sense of adventure. Deep love for astronomy. Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson are some of my intellectual influencers. Love doing home hobby projects, Arduino, home hobby electrical home hobby projects. And just exploring new ideas. I'm curious by nature, so always looking for creative pursuits wherever they are.
Tell me about astrology. How'd you get into astrology?
So astronomy specifically, yeah.
Look at this.
No
This is a
worries.
layman. The layman will make that mistake. Big
Fair
difference
enough. Yeah,
between
big-
astrology and astronomy.
Big difference, yes. Astronomy being the science and study of stars. But no, got into that at an early age, really at 18, coming into the world. And really what caught my attention was the science communicators, especially Neil deGrasse Tyson and Carl Sagan, just how they spoke about the universe, astrophysics, but with a passion that actually captured your attention. And that's what really got my interest in looking into anything astrophysics. So while admittedly I cannot do any of the calculations that they perform, I still take all of their work in and appreciate those that have taken the time and dedicated their lives to study the universe and pass on that knowledge to the rest of us laymen. So it's more of a hobby interest than a study.
Do you want to connect with business leaders and engage consumers who take action? The Joey Pinz podcast delivers high-impact conversations to an audience of decision makers, entrepreneurs, and professionals across multiple industries. A fast-growing audience of highly engaged listeners, both B2B and B2C. Millions of listens and views across YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Brands that sponsor us see real engagement, conversations, and brand loyalty. Whether you're looking to sell a service, promote a product, or establish thought leadership, our sponsorships offer premium ad placements, exclusive episode sponsorships, full season branding, and event partnerships. Don't just advertise, become part of the conversation. Visit us at joeypins.com/sponsor to get started, or email us at sales@joeypins.com. Joey Pinz Podcast, where thought leaders, brands connect.
So how does astrophysics? Whenever I hear Neil Tyson, I mean, what a great spokesman, by the way.
Yeah,
Whenever he's on anything, I just glued. I'm just listening. But how does astrophysics merge into astronomy?
Well, astronomy being the study of stars,
Right.
and their position in the sky and their relation to everything. I mean, astrophysics is the underpinning, physical reality that we all exist in, right? So, why do stars form? How do they form? How do the planets around those stars form? That is all driven by the laws of astrophysics.
I see. And you're in Air Force. You went there. Were you a pilot?
Correct. No,
What'd
no,
you do
I
in the Air
was
Force?
not. Most in the Air Force do not fly. A small percentage do. Like most in the Air Force, I was logistics support.
I see.
So I did pipeline fuel distribution operation.
Wow.
Mostly Eielson Air Force Base up in Alaska.
Really?
It was mostly dealing with just sitting in front of a SCADA screen and looking at pipeline pressures, going and doing refuels on aircraft, whether those were from remote tanks that we drove out there and filled them, or through the pipeline hydraulic system.
And do you have to have any knowledge of being a pilot to do this? I mean, what's the relationship?
Yeah, not necessarily.
None.
I came in to the Air Force during the Great Recession, and so I had no training whatsoever leading into that. But they put you through technical training school, and it was they teach you what you need to do to do your job effectively. And so that's mostly what I did. It was a very short stint in the Air Force. But proud to have been able to do that, and it taught me a lot and actually led me towards the path that I'm
your
on
career,
now.
right?
Exactly.
What?
Yeah.
'Cause hydraulics? Forgive me. Like, what's the connection there?
So the connection between the Air Force and like what I do now,
Yeah.
really it was the technology side, the SCADA portion. So SCADA being supervisory control and data acquisition. Basically, a network of instruments, of sensors that are out throughout the distributed network, taking in real-time information back to a centralized computer that then is either automating those actuations, those pumps, valves, and making sure that the pipeline is at a good pressure threshold, that you're not exceeding or dropping that pressure. And so that, spending time working as an operator with those systems eventually led me to then go and sell SCADA systems for utilities. Just that kind of background knowledge. So not an expert necessarily, but plenty of experience with on the operations side, and then now 8 years at this organization, the folks that I've worked with have taught me a lot.
How old are your children, Colin?
So they are 4 and 2, about to be 5 and 3 next month.
4 and 2, under
Yes.
5. Male, female?
One of each. So oldest, my daughter Emily, she's 4. My son James is 2.
Wow.
And they are curious as well, which I love to see. Energetic, which keeps me on my toes, and just beautiful, intelligent, and everything you can ask for.
It's
as a
wonderful,
father.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you going to have another?
No.
Ah.
No, we made that decision.
It's a big jump.
We don't want to be outnumbered.
Yes. You got to go from man to zone.
Exactly.
When
And you
get
know what? That
third.
was not a defensive strategy we wanted to take on. Not to mention the cost, for sending them to higher education, right?
Right.
Who knows what that cost is going to be in another 20
Outrageous.
years? So
Outrageous.
we thought we'd hedge our bets a little bit.
5 and 2. And how do you balance homework life?
It's challenging at times. We have the fortune of being able to mostly work remotely. from our homes, both myself and my wife. She works in the government sector for a private organization, and she works marketing operations. I'm sales, so we actually do a lot of back and forth on just kind of sharing what's working, what's not, with messaging and things like that. But no, we've been very fortunate to be able to have a good setup to where we can both be there for the kids, help them go to school, get plugged into work, go pick them up together. Not a lot of people are able to work out that kind of an arrangement, so we're very lucky, very fortunate.
Yeah, very fortunate, because it's tough now. It's very, very tough.
It is, and especially with the cost of daycare, which is just outrageous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost
Having
one
that home
salary has to be
support.
dedicated to that. It's crazy.
An entire salary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've had that conversation before. Is like, does it make sense for one person to step
Right.
back? Right. But at the end of the day, we're able to manage it all right.
So, Colin, we're here in Fort Lauderdale. It's early February 2025 at the ITEXPO/MSP Expo Tech Super Show. What are some of your goals here?
Yeah, so some of my goals are really just understanding what the latest industry trends are, understanding what MSPs are looking for with today's challenges, whether that's on the security front, how they can solve for workforce challenges, anything that can relate to, of course, my objectives of finding good partners in the space to be able to share our solution or share our solution with, and help them, have something to offer their clients to manage their processes a bit better.
We had the good fortune of speaking a little earlier today. I enjoyed our time together. Looking at MSPs, what do you like about it?
Yeah, I mean, they're a necessary component of the modern world, right? I mean, with the ever-evolving landscape of interconnectedness, especially between information technology and operational technology, this convergence that is happening, MSPs are the ones that are managing that whole process, right? They're making sure that the guards or the gates are guarded, and that they're able to provide as much uptime to their clients as possible, when we know that uptime is of the most importance right now.
Yeah, it sure is. And what are the challenges in working with MSPs?
The challenges with working with them, I would say, is just finding a way to provide them with what they need in an efficient, format. And so I know, from what they deal with, MSPs are, focused on especially security, right? Strengthening cybersecurity for their end users, being able to manage that. I mentioned workforce challenges. We see that all across the board, right? Not just MSPs, but just about every industry sector, where you've got a shortage of talented labor that can do that work, that can manage it, and then keeping that knowledge within the organization. And then one of my challenges is trying to figure out how can we enable MSPs to grow, to scale their revenue, scale their services in a way that actually adds value, not just to their operations, but ultimately to their end users.
Yeah, it's certainly a wide landscape. You made a really great point earlier that I want people to hear, because you work with water.
Yes.
And so, it's right after this terrible disaster in Los Angeles, and I said, they ran out of water, how that's possible. But that's bad information.
Yeah, and there's
Tell
a
me
lot
what
of
happened.
that going on.
Yeah.
Right? And that's part of the challenge of today's modern world is
Yes.
kind of sifting through, being able to not just retain knowledge, but synthesize all of the information that's out there and sift through it. So when we hear about especially those challenges in LA and Palisades and with the Eaton fires, there was a lot of misinformation being thrown around, especially about the water systems there. And I just have to say, LADWP, all of the fire personnel, emergency response personnel that were fighting those fires did an outstanding job.
Yeah.
They were, what a lot of people do not understand, you hear they ran out of water, right?
Yes.
That's a phrase getting thrown around, but these systems, these water systems, distribution systems are meant to support, home consumption of water, commercial consumption of water. They are not designed to fight thousands of fires at a single time, right? So if you look at a hydrant system in a neighborhood, that hydrant can probably support, 3 to 4, maybe 5 structured fires at a time to fight. When you have thousands happening across the same neighborhood, the system just becomes overwhelmed. And you can't really engineer your way out of that issue.
Wow.
There's just a lot of moving parts to that, especially in the throes of an emergency situation. And the pipelines just aren't designed to carry that much water for that purpose, right? So the system just got overwhelmed, and that's going to happen anywhere.
It could happen. That could have happened
It can
anywhere.
happen anywhere.
Your brand deserves to be in front of the right audience decision makers, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are ready to take action. That's exactly who listens to the Joey Pinz podcast. Thousands of engaged business leaders and consumers tune in every week. Millions of views and listens across YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Sponsors see real impact, higher engagement, brand trust, and conversations. We offer strategic partnerships tailored to your goals, including targeted ad placements, branded guest appearances, multi-episode and event sponsorships. Make your brand part of the conversation. Let's grow together. Visit joeypins.com/sponsor to explore sponsorship opportunities, or email us at sales@joeypins.com. The Joey Pinz podcast, where brands and thought leaders connect. We were talking about 100-mile-an-hour winds where they can't even contain it. The aircraft can't even fly in that.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to a firefighter, and he mentioned that at 10 miles an hour winds, he's a firefighter. At 30-mile-an-hour winds, he's an observer.
Wow.
And, aerial, especially in rough topography, which the Palisades, both Palisades and Eaton were both in kind of rough terrain areas. Your biggest option on the table to fight that is aerial support, right? And after 40-mile-an-hour winds or higher, you lose that ability to fight it from the air. And so at that point, everybody is an observer. And you just kind of have to do your best to create those perimeters, those defensive perimeters, best as possible, and wait for the winds to die down until you can actually, go in and do your job.
Man. The heart of firefighters is something, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
So underappreciated.
Very much. And yeah, underappreciated by just about everybody.
Yeah.
They're usually overworked, underpaid. And so talk about labor loss, right? Or workforce challenges.
Yeah.
They're also facing that right now.
We saw a big kind of shift in 9/11, in New York. I'm from the East Coast, and we saw that, and I don't know, it kind of faded. But even teachers, there's so much underappreciation in our workforce today here in the States.
There is, yeah.
It's disheartening. But you're in tech now. Now, you're in tech more than water, would you say?
Correct. Yeah. So our company XIO, and XIO, for those listening, it stands for Variable Input Output. And what we are is a provider, a pioneer, really, a provider of cloud-based SCADA and operations management solutions. So it was designed specifically initially to help wastewater utilities. One of our founders, Paul Sages, was a water operator in his previous life before he went to engineering school, and talented engineer. Developed a great controller device that started our company off, and we served small, medium-sized wastewater systems at the beginning. And over the last several years, we've kind of shifted from a hardware-centric to focusing on software and internet traffic support for that. So especially remote monitoring, remote control of those critical assets for whether it's water, wastewater, composting, mining, ag water. There's a lot of different applications for that. But our flagship platform, Acuity Hub, delivers essentially secure, scalable, and intelligent monitoring and control for distributed infrastructure.
So your message to potential partners, MSPs, is?
Yeah, so I'd say, at XIO, we've designed our platform to bridge the gap between modern MSP services and industrial SCADA needs. So we have a partner portal that gives MSPs complete visibility over distributed SCADA assets, enhances security, reduces on-site labor, enabling scalable recurring revenue for those providers. And if you're an MSP looking to grow into industrial automation without the headaches of legacy SCADA and everything that comes with it, Acuity Hub is the managed solution that you've been waiting for.
Colin, has there been anything in the last month or so that you changed your mind on?
That I've changed my mind on in general? That's a great question. I would say that I've changed my mind on being quick to judge, especially, we always hear don't judge a book by its cover. I think especially in today's realm, a lot of folks are very quick to judge. I have been a part of that myself throughout my life. It's human instinct.
Sure.
We have evolved to this point through that ability to, judge very quickly either other people or situations. But what I've learned, especially with working with folks across the scale from operators to service providers, is that, those first initial meetings with somebody doesn't really tell you everything about them. And really taking the time to have a conversation, to speak with somebody who doesn't necessarily hold your view, no matter what it is, right? Whether we're talking politics, whether we're talking personal life, whether we're talking technology, being open and being able to have a conversation with someone, I have found, especially over the last few months, teaches me a lot, whether it's about myself or just about humans in general, human nature.
That's nice. I mean, it's a nice sentiment, to try to be open-minded. We're so, many of us are just so dug in now,
Right.
and
Very entrenched.
I like to think I can change my mind on any given subject, given new evidence.
Right. And I think that ultimately is what helps us, as a society, as a species progress, is being able to just like with any kind of a technology, situation, you're taking in inputs and then you're driving outputs from there. We are no different, right? We are taking inputs all the time from different aspects. And if you are not recalibrating internally to those inputs that you're receiving, because they're going to change over time, then you're not going to grow as a person, right? I'd say that is the big takeaway, especially over the last few months that I've come with.
So, Colin, I started my business in the MSP in the early 90s, was working way too hard, putting my health in the back seat. I'm sitting at the doctor's office. She tells me I'm 340 pounds. She says to me, if I don't lose this weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. My daughter was just born.
Wow.
It scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
So I'm driving home angry. I did this to myself. Punching the steering wheel, Spent the next 6-7 months, lost about 130 pounds and kept it off. People, oftentimes with losing weight, they look at it as a finishing line. It's lifelong changes you have to make.
Right.
So people hear what I tell them about losing the weight and they want, what'd you do? There's no quick answer. I say
what's your
discipline.
secret?
Yeah, no secret. Yeah,
Right.
that's the word I was looking for. Discipline. That's how I got motivation. I got, routine. How does discipline play a role in your life, Colin?
I mean, it's something I probably couldn't do better, right? Having even after time in the Air Force, discipline it's always kind of a moving target because things change in your life, right? The biggest thing I would say is small steps, right? I mean, we've all heard, the adage of, if you set your initial goal to be a high level goal, you're probably not going to achieve it, right? If your A to B point is just there. But if you are plotting A to Z, and then you are plotting out all of those minor steps along the way, right? And then, so that is you kind of have to lay out the strategy first, and then the discipline is doing it every day, right? Doing those small steps every single day along the way. And so, that's something that, I've seen people who I've looked up to that are just, in my mind, the most disciplined people, right? They're almost machines built for the military, right? But we're all humans at the end of the day, and it's tough to keep that motivation.
It is,
especially over a long period of time. But that's where those small incremental goals, those incremental steps, can really help get you there.
Has fatherhood changed your view on discipline?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to how you shape that in the home for your children. I grew up in an environment where it was very, heavy-handed discipline kind of a aspect. And so, taking that experience and trying to find a different path that's still, not necessarily like laissez-faire, like not do whatever you want, right? But trying to provide, guidance towards, where I'm hoping they end up, right?
Interesting.
And just trying to give as much insight and critical thinking capabilities so that ultimately they can have their own discipline strategy. They're only 4 and 2, or about to be 5 and 3 right now. So,
yeah.
But those sentiments start early, and so with discipline, I mean, trying to teach that, right? That A to Z and plotting all of those steps in between to my kids at a young age. I see my daughter, do homework. She comes home now, TK, has homework where she's got to draw freehand stuff, and she loves tracing, but the freehand stuff is different, right? And so instead of, hey, you need to draw this house, it is, well, what does a house contain, right? What are the small? Let's break it down into the smaller pieces and let's do one by one. Let's do the door. Now let's do the framing. Let's do the roof. And that's a small anecdote, but that kind of approach is what I try to instill to my kids. Not always perfectly.
Of course.
I am human. But so I'd say, yes, my outlook on discipline has changed quite a bit since becoming a father.
What motivates you, Colin?
Curiosity, honestly. Throughout my entire life, that's probably the through line from when I was a child to today, and I hope till the day I die. Curiosity is the number one driver for me. Just by nature, looking at things, how does that work? Why is that happening? What is this doing? What is the outcome of that? Just trying to question the world around and be open to the answers that come to you, right? Without any kind of preconceived notion. Just being curious and I would say passionately curious, which is probably why I gravitated so much to Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson and these science communicators.
Yeah, and that you can go so deep with that too. So given that motivation, how do you measure success?
I would say, my personal measurement of success is just growth, right? If you are not growing, then you are you're withering, really, right? Because you don't remain static. Entropy is a thing, right? Horrible. It is a law of the universe, and so if you remain static and you're not focused on growth, then you're not just remaining the same, you are withering. Entropy will take hold. And so, I would say just keeping that curious flame alive as best as possible. And with that goal of just growing a little bit, either each day, each week, each month. And there's no, direct outcome that I'm looking for necessarily on that, right? Growth for the sake of personal growth.
Looking for a powerful way to reach business leaders and engage consumers? The Joey Pinz podcast connects brands like yours with an audience that listens, engages, and takes action. High impact exposure with a fast growing loyal audience. Millions of views and listens across major platforms. Sponsors see increased brand awareness, trust, and conversations. We make sponsorships simple and effective with custom ad placements that fit your brand, deep audience engagement through authentic conversations, long-term exposure across podcast platforms and social media. Don't miss the opportunity to connect with your ideal customers. Visit joeypinz.com/sponsor to secure your sponsorship today. Or you can email us at sales@joeypinz.com. The Joey Pinz podcast, where conversations drive results.
Very cool. I find, Colin, as I get older, I have more questions.
Yeah. Well, it's that curious nature.
Yeah, I just
right?
have to. I just
That's
have to
the
keep
best thing
learning.
to do. Always ask.
Yeah, because I think I know something reasonably well, and then I find out that I don't.
That reminds me of, and I'm going to quote Neil deGrasse Tyson here, and something that stuck with me is, people typically will know enough about a subject to think that they're right. But not enough about that subject to know that they're wrong. And that has always kind of stuck with me.
I have heard him say that.
He's out there. He says it a lot.
Yes, he does.
And it's something that, from the first time I heard it to every time I hear him say it, it just kind of reminds me and gets me back to a set basic of nobody's going to know everything.
Right.
Even if you're an expert in your field, you're still not going to know everything, right? And so just trying to know enough about the things that you're passionate about, the things that you care about, whether that's technology and personal life, in research and education, to understand that you'll never know everything, but that pursuit of knowledge is what's going to help you grow, right?
It's humbling.
It is.
Very, very humbling. Well, Colin, thank you so much for your time. Anybody listening and watching, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can get in touch with us. Go ahead and go to our website, www.xiowatersystems.com, or you can reach out to us at info@xiowater.com.
Oh, xiowater.com.
Correct.
Ah, very good. And, of course, you're on LinkedIn. We'll make sure we'll put that up as well. Colin, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Joe.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.